Hello and welcome to Hightailing Through History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history's vault of the weird and the wonderful. I'm Laurel, the older sister.
I'm Katie, younger sister, but I think that goes without saying.
I like how we did this like a little roller coaster. Arms
Did
up,
we?
like, we're ready to go. Season 2, episode 3. Welcome, everybody. It's the end of the year. This is our last episode for season 2 is our last episode of the calendar year. So I hope you guys all had a nice Christmas and holiday season. Looking forward to the new year. See what 2024 is going to bring. Hopefully it's all right. Just fingers crossed at this point. Holding on to my lap bar.
Good idea.
We've had a great year. And thank you, Katie, for helping make it a great year. Thank you to our guests who have been on the show. They've all been amazing and wonderful, and we have more of them to come, especially this season. We've got some really great people. And to you, more than anything, it's that you're here and listening to us and getting those listens in and everything. And I think that's that just makes our hearts so happy. And also, talking about listens, we are, as of this recording, at the time that everybody hears this, it'll probably be a little bit closer to the 9,150 or 9,200 mark there. But we are just a little over 9,000 listens. Thank you so much. We have projected that we're going to be at the 10,000, that coveted, that first benchmark, the coveted 10,000 listens. And that should be at the end of season 2, based on how it's looking. So thank you so much. And we really just want to, just send so much love to you guys for supporting us the way that you have. This is true. And the United States has been our top listens, about 80%. But we've had some countries that from the beginning have really stuck it out with us. And that's you, Australia. You're at 5% of our listens. United Kingdom, Germany. You guys have always been in those top 4 countries there. But, it's been duking it out recently with Canada and the Netherlands. I know we've got some listeners there in the Netherlands. One in particular has reached out and has been binge listening from the beginning for like the last few months. And every once in a while we'll say, I'm at this point in your catalog now. And it makes my day. So I know he's not going to hear this until
for a while,
until a couple of months from now, probably. If he makes it that long, if he really decides that, he's listened to half the catalog so far, wants to keep going. Niels or Niels. I realized I haven't asked for pronunciation of the name, but thank you. Because you and your country people are really busting down the door here. And a big one to Morocco. Just in the last few months, Casablanca has been, just all of a sudden you're very much in our top 5 countries. Coming in hot indeed. And so it's these sort of things where you get to see the countries and these cities from all over the world where people are listening from. And it really just, not only is it cool to see and just be like, hey, there are other people in the world that give a damn, but the fact that you are spending this sort of time with us, because we know ourselves, we know each other, we know it can be a bit of a rambly path to be on with us, and
we side quest.
We're we might not ever be everyone's cup of tea all the time or anything like that. I know, we get it, and so the fact that you go, I love you girls, and I love listening is amazing to me. So thank you so much. Let's make 2024 amazing. What do you say?
Oh yeah,
let's do it. And I think what's going to make it amazing is let's continue on with what we do here, Katie. So
right.
What are you imbibing in today? What's your thing?
I'm so glad you asked. I was waiting for this moment. So I made an entire mug for Fox's sake.
For Fox's sake, yeah.
From my lovely coworkers. They always took care of me. It is my maple bourbon hot chocolate. What's your choice of imbibement this evening?
I am going with just a good old sticky bowl of. I wish I knew what this was. I
did not sound very.
A sweet sticky bowl. I think this is Miracle Alien Cookies version 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And Cookie Face. I think I put a couple of them together because that was just like I happen to have a little bit of each one. Right. We get to do a little bit of bottle leaf grinder. You ready? Let's figure out who's going to go first.
All right.
Bottle leaf grinder. Shoot. You crushed my grinder.
Bam.
All right.
Alrighty then. Okay. So here we are. My story for today. I'm going to be honest. I hope that you feel like the love from this, because I specifically wrote this one really for you. So I hope you like it. Well, it has to do with a lot of like women's history stuff. Okay. So there is going to be a little bit of repeat from some previous stories I've done, but this is more to be like an in-depth look at certain topics. Okay. And if you don't like it, I might cry. So but it was like, cool, no pressure.
I'll just say I like it regardless. So
I'll just lie. It's fine. Don't do that. It's not worth it.
Okay.
This came about from me vibing and listening to some of my more favorite playlists. And this song made its way around social media a lot. But my introduction to it was via a lot of my more folk style playlists. Okay. You're so confused. You have no idea where this is going.
Sorry, I just realized I was making a face. Yeah, sorry. Smooth out those creases.
I'm hoping that, this brings joy to your world, but we're going to find out.
Okay.
So as I researched a little more into it, I noticed not a lot of people know much of anything about this song. So the song is known as My Mother's Savage Daughter. Do you know it?
I know of it. Yeah, that's not what the song I was thinking you were going to say. Okay. But yeah, I know of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's been picked up recently as an anthem for a lot of women all around the world. When I say a lot, I mean from all walks of life, different backgrounds, everything, right? So have you heard it before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably not in its entirety, or yes in its entirety?
No, not in its entirety.
Okay, so in the social media aspect.
Social media, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, we shall rectify that.
Okay.
So this song in itself is a powerful and moving piece, and it plays in our house alongside such bands as Wardruna, Hailong, Fawn. A lot of that, it comes up on that playlist a lot. Just to name a few, it tends to be very folkish in nature, is how a lot of people, though it wasn't necessarily written to be that way. Not that that's a bad thing. The song was written quite recently in 1990 by a lady whose name is Karen Kahan, but she goes by the name of Windrith Bergensdotter, which I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right, and when I looked it up, I didn't find anything, so I hope I got close. So Windrith is an American woman of Nordic descent and possibly of Germanic, we shall say, descent, and she spends her days writing poetry and songs in a group called the SCA, which is known as the Society for Creative Anachronism. As my notes say, for those who don't know, because I sure as hell didn't, anachronism is a thing, event, or place out of time, out of the time period that it currently is in. So think like trails of history.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The SCA is a practical history society. They focus not just on teaching history, but on living it as well. So it kind of links up to some things you and I have talked about with some guests who prefer to live history as well as just read it in a book. Right, it's an immersive experience, and it recreates the arts and skills of pre-17th century Europe. When you are visiting, you can experience tournaments, royal courts, feasts, dancing, and learning practical skills such as calligraphy, cooking, armoring, metalworking, and carpentry, as well as needlework. And that's just a few. They have like a whole spectrum of things. And from what I understand, it looked like it was year-round, but I included the link to it in our sources and stuff, so anyone who's interested in it can go check it out. So the SCA, the participants, so the people who are involved in creating this, they develop a persona, right, to represent an individual from the Middle Ages who might have existed, but it cannot be based on a real historical figure. So you can't show up as like King Henry V or something. Like, you have to make something else.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the SCA has grown over the last 50 years. I think it said that it started as a graduation event for a lady in California. It was like this kind of nerdy thing that her friends put on for her. It's like a celebration. And it got so popular that it's there's more than 1,000 events happening on 5 continents every year. So it's grown. This is a thing. It's a deal.
What?
Correct.
Okay.
So
Goodness.
delving into the history part of this, although this is all history, it begs the question, what did life look like for women in the Viking Age? Because specifically in Windrith's case, that's what she deals with. So that's what I am bringing you today. More of a nuanced day-to-day life for these women, right? So as I have previously discussed in episode 26, shield maidens, probably familiar. Women in the Viking Age, we shall call them, because women could not actually be Vikings, because Viking was a verb, which I'm pretty sure I've probably covered before, but I'm going to state it again here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, for those who may not know. So if I was to go on an expedition or a raiding party, I would be going Viking. So I will not refer to them as Vikings in this sense, because in a historical sense, they lived during the Viking Age. So they would have either been Danish, Norse, Finnish, or Swedish.
Right.
Scandinavian, we shall say. So women of this age enjoyed more rights and freedom than female counterparts elsewhere. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because I think people are like, yeah, they didn't have it so bad. I mean, there was still traditional roles to fill, right? It was still similar to a lot of traditional civilizations when you looked at it, especially archaeologically. So it was during the Viking Age, it was still considered a male-dominated society, even in Scandinavia. Men did the hunting, the fighting, the trading, and the farming, while women did the cooking, caring for the home, and raising children, which is a task in and of itself. Burials have often been found to reflect that this society is what one would call more traditional gender roles. Men were buried with weapons and tools, and women were buried with household items, needlework, and jewelry. And in some cases, not in all, but in some cases, women who I think were of a higher class, I think they called it, were actually buried with keys. They almost always had keys on them. It was symbolic of how they were the keepers of the home, right? Which includes management of everything. So,
right, yeah.
As like low key as it sounds, it was possibly a little bit even more work. Because as I will tell you as we go on a little further, sometimes their work doubled. Because guess what? What did I say about these people? When the men would go on expeditions, nobody's there to do all the rest of the work that they were doing in the first place. So guess who has to do it? Plus everything else they were already doing. Everybody was left.
Yeah.
I.e. women. So women's work would probably include housekeeping, making food, working wool, spinning the yarn, sewing and weaving, and of course pregnancy and breastfeeding, which takes up a lot of time and energy. So it's thought that the women most likely looked after the children and the elderly. Makes sense, because they were probably all in the house together. When the men were called upon for an expedition, the responsibility for the farm was handed over to the woman. That's it. As soon as that ship sailed out of the fjord, it's her responsibility. So she has to secure the harvest and essentially the family's survival. By the way, on your own. Yeah. So like when they're like, yeah, she was a housekeeper, I'm like, yes, but. Yes, but. She was also like, by the way, all the stuff I do when I'm around, you got me, right?
Yeah.
I'll be back. Maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they'd be gone for long periods of time, or
years at a time,
never come back. Like so.
Years at a time.
Yeah.
Like when it. So, for instance, if we go visit family in England, it's 6 hours, right? Excuse me, it's 6 hour time difference. It's an 8 hour flight. 8 hour flight. They're in wooden boats, which are still impressive. Like, yeah, you row. So It was thought that, however, when the men were not there, when they were present, when the families all together, regardless of sex and age, the whole household helped with daily tasks. It wasn't just like, make me a sandwich, right? Like, no, it was like, hey, you're here, your hands are fine, you're not broken, get to work. That was really how this society really seemed. It's a very different, the more you get into it, it's very interesting to me because the broad strokes of this society are painted for us as these big giant berserkers, these Norsemen that just came in and like pillaged and raided, took what they want, burned down stuff, and like left with riches, right? And
Right.
like, so this very male dominated society. But really, when you look at how like the home life was run, it really seemed a lot more like, lack of a better word, kith and kin. Like, my neighbor is my brother unless proven otherwise, you know? And if something is wrong, his wife and his family are my extended family. And, you know, we take care of each other. And it was really interesting, which I did not know, it was not uncommon to have foster children. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
I decided, hey, mom, I'm going to go live at Eagle's house. You know, they do a lot of, let's say, like, what's a trade? Like textile, like weaving and stuff. Whereas my family are farmers and I want to learn weaving. I'd be like, okay, well, if they're fine with that, then that's fine. And that's it. You go live with them. And then at the time that you come ready for marriage, you know, my parents are going to negotiate that, you know, on my behalf, most likely with my say in it, though. It was just really interesting how they're more tightly knit than
Mm-hmm.
you would assume, you know, and it wasn't necessarily, like I said, it wasn't like, make me a sandwich, woman. It was, you know, we're all here kind of working and helping each other. Not to say that there weren't traditional roles. There were. They definitely were. So archaeological discoveries by the University of Tübingen, Tubingen, Tübingen, analyzed the teeth and skeletons of human remains from this time period, right? So we're thinking about 800 CE to about 1100 CE is about the age we're looking at here. And they compared these human remains with others across Europe at the same time, roughly. So they were looking for the condition of the teeth enamel and the length of the femur bones. So what they found in the Scandinavian societies is that they were relatively equal, almost the exact same length, and the teeth enamel did not show more decay for one gender than the other. Just super interesting.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you why. In an
Yeah.
unequal society, you would expect to find permanent damage in tooth enamel, especially for girls and women who receive less food and less care than the male members of society. That was not the case here. The
Oh.
extent of the differences between genders is therefore a measure of the equality within the population between them. Researchers argue due to how similar both genders were in health, it was a reflection that women of the Viking Age enjoyed, and this is the word that the researchers use, a remarkable amount of equality, which goes back to what I was saying before, is that they weren't necessarily looked at as lesser people of society, but you were expected to fill a role. This is
Mm-hmm.
what you do, and this is your job, but we all take care of each other, right? So
Yeah.
while their sphere of power is mainly a domestic one, women of the Viking Age still had pretty much unheard of levels of like human rights in Europe at the time, like insanely, right? Like if you told the women in England that, they'd be like, "What the?" and they'd move out. So they could own property, which is insane. It really is. I don't think people realize that. I should have put a little thing together, but there's a lot here of like basically what it looked like elsewhere in the world. They could own property. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Property is power, equity. They can request a divorce. Again, unheard of, especially at this time. And they can even reclaim their dowries if the marriage fell through. Oh, yeah, by the way, that shit's mine again,
Love that.
right?
That's really interesting. Okay.
I know.
Thank you.
So women tended to marry between about 12 to 15. And it was the families that negotiated the terms of marriage, but the women did usually have a say in it. So now a father wouldn't necessarily have to be like, hey, I was thinking about this. Like he could just go on and do it without asking her. But was not unusual. Again, they weren't looked at necessarily as lesser in society. So,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? So it was probably one of those things where most of the time it seemed like the girls were kind of had their eyes out. They were putting those feelers out,
Mhm.
looking for some, yeah, man, they were looking for some fresh meat. So it was also not uncommon for women to compete amongst each other for who had the best husband. Right? I was like, hell yeah. So it was thought that young girls were actually well trained as to what to look for in a prospective husband. That's why I say it was most likely the girls who would probably like say, "Hey, Eric's son is looking, beard's coming in nice. He's got armpit hair now. Like we could be talking now." So it's
Mhm.
one of those things that it was probably a decent amount of them being on the lookout for, hey, he's got a broad back. He will hoe a garden like nobody else. Because believe it or not, the
Hot.
people of this society, for the most part, were farmers more than anything else. Fierce warriors when necessary. But a
Sure.
lot of times when those big old berserkers got back home, if they weren't, in the trades or uh if they were, obviously the higher up you are in society, your roles change a little bit. A lot of them were farmers though.
Mm.
So while the man was looked at as the ruler of the household, it was the woman who managed the household as well as the husband. So these are our tasks. This is what's getting done. Here your stuff. You know, do it to it. If he died, the wife adopted his role on a permanent basis. It's hers now, single handedly running a farm or a trade business, as well as raising children.
Mm.
Which, oh my God.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, whew. To initiate divorce, the woman had to call a witness to her home and to her marriage bed and declare in front of them that she had divorced her husband. I'm done with this sorry sack. So within the contract that the families, during the courtship, when you are negotiating for marriage, including dowries and whatnot, they would at that point kind of think of it like a prenup, right?
Yep.
It would usually state before the marriage even happened how property would be divided up in case of a divorce. Which,
Mhm.
way to think ahead. Like, way to not screw over your daughter, dude. Well, hopefully, if you were good at
Yeah.
it.
Right.
I don't know. I thought that was really cool.
So what were some of the reasons, if you have them,
Oh,
that
we're getting
like
there. You hang
okay.
in there, girl. I'm going to hit you with
Okay.
those soon.
All right.
So, when the Spanish Arabic traveler Al Tartushi visited Hedeby in the 900s CE, he was shocked that women could divorce if they wished. Because, I mean, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
that is not how it's done in the Muslim culture. Very different,
Mhm.
right? So within the sagas, it is written of many divorced women and widows who marry again, which is interesting. So it's evidence of a quite advanced legal system, especially again for that time. They were
Right.
ahead of their time. So grounds for divorce, here you go, Laurel, would include failure for a man to go to bed with his wife for 3 years. So again, if you're gone for years on an expedition and you don't make
Yeah.
it back in time, if she chose, she could be like, you know what? Man has not done the manly duties in a while. It's about time for me to find a new piece. So get out.
So okay. Okay. So would the clock start the minute the ship rode pushed back from to shore? Be like, all right, you got 3 years. Do you think the Vikings were like quick? It's been
We
two
gotta get
years and
back.
11 months.
Helga's
Like
gonna leave me.
we gotta go, boys. Let's get back there. We've got like few
Probably.
weeks. We gotta
So,
row fast.
just from what I know about the culture and society in general, I think my knowledge is specifically very Norwegian, if that makes sense, because
Okay.
the Danes and the Nords and the Swedes were different peoples and they did war amongst themselves plenty of the time. So I'm going to try to not refer to them as a monolith. So,
Mhm.
from what I have researched and understood, your age is measured in how many winters you have lived. So that's how your age was kept. So perhaps it doesn't really say, to answer your
Okay.
question. But
All right.
I would guess, because that was very common for their timekeeping, probably how many winters he was away.
Yeah.
Because that would be the amount of years. Or, I mean, she could, in court, she could probably argue, hey, clock is ticking, man. Tick tock. But a lot of historians said they're like, probably the reason for that rule is to stop women from being lonely. Because guess what? A lonely woman is not doing what?
Making babies?
Reproducing.
Yeah.
Problem. So I mean,
Yeah.
because if you're not reproducing, your society is losing function, and members who make it work. So it's important. And there was a lot of, especially in these people, there's a lot of power in reproduction for the women. Which is kind of magical if you think about it. They weren't just looked at as like broodmares, essentially, is what I'm telling you.
Right. Okay.
They had more functions than just that.
Yeah.
So another reason, grounds for divorce, would be sudden poverty in the man's family or domestic violence within the home against the woman. So if he struck his wife more than 3 times, she could march everybody into her house and say, I'm fucking divorcing this guy. I'm out. Mm-hmm. So it is also worth noting, along with divorce, while a woman could be punished for infidelity, a man could bring mistresses home. However, any woman brought into that house now falls under the authority of the first wife, the wife. So if you want to submit yourself to her rule, feel free, but it's her house, her rules.
That's a really interesting dynamic.
Isn't it? So I didn't look up any examples of that, but that was how that would go. So I'm gonna guess it probably wasn't very common, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
because if she tells you to pick up the clothes and do the washing, you pick up the clothes and you do the washing. Mm-hmm. This is her house. So,
wow,
I know.
That'd be interesting. Yeah,
they had a very interesting society. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend looking into it if you ever have time. So some women could rise to a higher status within the society, as shown by a burial at Augsburg, where a woman, possibly a queen, there's no way to really verify that claim, was buried with a longship, which was kind of a dude thing, by the way, the longship, right? Because it was the men who would expedition. She had many goods, such as chests, buckets, beds, a carriage, sledges, so like dashing through the snow in a 1-horse open sleigh, that kind of thing. Bedding with fine feathers and down, oil lamps, which, by the way, oil lamps were a lot of times put with kings in their burials. Or, king is such a weird word to use for them. Chieftain, because they were a lot more like tribes. There were rare moments, and his name is escaping me, but Harold Fairhair, I think it was one who united all of Norway under one king. That was a big deal. That didn't really happen because like they could work together, fight amongst each other, these tribes like that, right? But for the most part, they kind of left each other alone. So oil lamps, tapestries, along with cooking pots, frying pans, and knives. So, along with all of these accoutrement of finery, she still had the household items that told us, well, she could achieve power like a man. Women still were responsible for that hearth and home, right? Still super important. So, question everybody, I know, right? So, question everybody wants to know, right? Were women involved in the fighting? So there are records of women fighting, specifically with the Varangian Vikings, during a battle with the Bulgarians in 971 CE. It was recorded by Johannes Skylitz, a Byzantine-era historian. So, again, as with most things with these people, the only stuff we have is what everybody else wrote down. So another example of a written account of women within historical literature is Saxo Grammaticus. He wrote in his work the Gesta or Gesta Denorium. I don't know much about Latin, but it's probably Gesta. It's Gesta. He writes of a shield maiden named Lagertha that fought along the famous Viking Ragnar Lothbrok. Peep episode number 19. In battle against the Swedes, she so impressed him that he courted her and won her hand in marriage. Did it ever happen?
Big shrug.
Okay. We may never actually know. It's difficult to know what was factually written down by Saxo, what was legend, and scholars are super hesitant, especially, again, with this kind of stuff, to give credence to legends that you can't back up with archaeological evidence. So if you can't prove it, it didn't happen. But you and I spoke with one of our previous guests about we discount too much oral history, and I firmly believe that. And I believe that there's a lot wrapped up in there that I think legend is woven in amongst a lot of it, along with, true historical events and stuff like that. And that's how we passed it down, right? So, did it happen? Maybe. It's kind of fun to think of that it did, right? In this society, it's not unheard of that a woman would be capable of such a thing. So, possibly. Most of what we know about women in the Viking Age, we know from literary sources, as I've stated before, including evidence of women warriors. These female warriors probably inspired the Valkyries, within the sagas especially, who, incidentally, are Odin's female servants, whose name means choosers of the slain. So, right?
So cool. Yeah.
So they selected warriors on the field of battle who died to take to Valhalla. And now I had read somewhere else where those who were not chosen, well, you could go to, what was the other option? Helheim, which is another afterlife. So Valhalla is you're at the feast with Odin. You've been specifically selected by Odin to sit at that table, right? That's a high honor, and only certain people got that. And I had written it in here, but I couldn't find the source that I had it, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Is, if I remember correctly, I thought those who weren't chosen to go were devoured by Odin's wolves, Gary and Freki. They kind of follow him around and devour people on the battlefield. It's pretty intense, dude.
Okay.
I mean, it happens, man. That's terrifying.
You can't all sit at this table.
Better make it worth it if you're gonna die.
That's okay. So you really, I don't know, as the saying goes, you go out on your shield kind of thing. You do,
you're
man. Going for it. Yeah.
In this society, you do.
Okay.
Make it count.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna lose your farm, your woman, and all your other stuff, you might as well make it count.
Hopefully you go to Valhalla.
You hope so. Gosh. Or Helheim. The other option isn't bad either. But
okay. I thought you were saying Helheim, and then you went to start saying it wasn't that bad, and I was like, oh, but then you started talking about the wolves that devour, and I was like, that doesn't sound.
There are wolves but that might be the enemies. That's the thing, is I was kind of doing research, but there was so much to get through for just the women specific part that I was looking into that, and I was like, well, I'll mention it, and those who want to look can research into Gary and Freki if they wish.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So, well, probably not common. It seems fairly certain that women did occasionally take up arms to fight, especially when their family or their property was threatened.
Hell yeah.
Try me.
A
study published in 2014 where researchers used mitochondrial DNA shows evidence that Norse women joined their men of the Viking Age migrations to England and to the islands of Shetland, Orkney, and of course to Iceland, right? Iceland is this big settled place. Well, it was one of their biggest colonies. Women were important agents of the processes of migration and assimilation, particularly in the uninhabited places such as Iceland. Without Norse women, the new settlements would never have happened. And that's the truth. So they did go at some point. It was not unheard of that women showed up on ships with men. Now, was it probably that there were war parties sent ahead to secure? Probably. And probably people came after, right? Bringing the women and their families and whatnot.
Okay.
But again, who's to say? Maybe, Egil loves having his lady along with him, and maybe she's fucking good at it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So, another story of like, I guess a warrior woman, or the importance of women in the settling of a society, is in the later 9th century. Aud, A-U-D, Aud, the deep-minded, was the daughter of a Norwegian chieftain from the, forgive me, Scottish listeners, Hebrides? They were islands off the north coast of Scotland, right? And it was pretty common for them to come down because they're up here, Scotland's right here.
Sure. Yeah.
Row, row, row your boat. And there they were. So she married a Viking king of Dublin, which I discuss in episode number 39.
Mm-hmm.
So after, unfortunately, her husband and son died, Aud uprooted her household. She put together a ship's voyage and included her grandchildren, and they sailed off to Iceland. So she put it together.
Oh.
She led it and became one of the colony's most important settlers in Iceland. A woman.
Wow.
Not a man, a woman. And then there's that whole thing, though, that, you find this in a lot of places where their family dies, their partner dies, something like that. And then they take up the mantle. Somebody's got to do it. And by golly, they were right there to take it. I mean, I think
that.
it's, super impressive, right?
Mm-hmm.
These mighty women of legend are not only responsible for their homesteads and their families and their communities when their men were away, they were also largely responsible for the teaching of history. Women of the Viking Age were practiced storytellers, and they carried on oral tradition for centuries until these legends and lessons were captured in writing in the Icelandic sagas, the prose Edda, the poetic Eddas, these written accounts that we finally have of these people, which are just teeny tiny little snapshots.
Mm.
That's like all we have, again, besides what is uncovered, in digs and stuff like that. So which brings us back to Windrith. So if you have not listened to this song in its entirety, it will be down in the show notes. A direct YouTube link to the lady who wrote it is singing it. Okay. So sung by the writer. So I put that one in there specifically. And I encourage you to listen to it now before the conclusion of this story. If you are in a safe place to do so, I would pause, listen, and come back. Women, welcome back. If you took your break. Many of the women at the SCA and Women of Water, it's a blog run in a combination of women, how would I describe it? It's ladies who are super, and men, I suppose, but it is centered more towards women, on keeping history, practices from history alive, probably is a good way to say it.
Okay.
And it's kind of a blog about these things. So that's where Windrith first posted her song. The women of this blog, they are song keepers, poetry tellers, and she left her words and comments about her piece that she wrote in the early 1990s. And that is what I'm going to read to you now. And that way we can all kind of get a good understanding of why this song was written and what it means. These are Windrith's words. Hi, folks. Just stopped by and want to thank every one of you for your support and your kind words. As with most of my writing in the SCA, it's based upon Viking Age cultures and the style of recreating oral traditions. I do a lot of that, yes. I study and I work hard to represent what was lost to us. This song, however, has a will and a meaning of its very own. In 1990, I woke up with the chorus in my head, and as soon as I found a pen, the rest of it poured out. The tune came that same day. It was clear to me that this was a song that wanted to be sung by anyone who found it within their own voice. It is an anthem of empowerment, not a song meant to serve a specific blood or people or skin. If you find strength and power in your own voice in it, this is your song, and I hope you sing it with strength and rage and beauty and power that is within you, whoever you may be. Women are never less than. We are the singers of storms, the fire made flesh, the inexorable power of the mountains, the kind warmth and cutting lash of the wind. We are half of the world, and we have been taught to speak softly and behave mildly because we are easier to control that way. I am honored that daughters of the first peoples find a voice here, and the daughters of the sea wolves, and the daughters of great grandmothers, grandmothers, and mothers, wherever they lived and sang and died. All of you are living legacies, and they hear you singing. Be assured they are proud of you. Whoever you are, you have a voice that cannot be silenced. Together with our voices, cannot be unheard. Thank you, and sing. The tradition of song and storytelling is kind of a part of who we are as our core as humans, and how we, for years, documented and kept our history through the centuries. So, in spirit and honor of all of that, that is why I chose this story to bring to you today, and hopefully as a little bit of women empowerment, and hopefully a special treat for Laurel, because she loves women's history, and this was really written for you.
I do. Thank you. That was really nice. That was a very unique take on just kind of a day in the life of a woman in the Viking Age. And we appreciate that, connecting that to more contemporary, more modern history that we might know, especially like, again, yeah, I heard that song all over TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. And
yep.
I thought it was a lovely song. I've never heard it all the way through. I was just like, oh, that's nice. So it's nice to have that connection to something that people might have heard and recognized.
Probably most have heard it. And to be honest, like, I was scrolling the comment section in a lot of these, and I was like, damn. I was like, people are like way off on this stuff. Like, people are like the fights that break out, and I was like, all right, I gotta settle this once and for all. Let's put the facts down on the page, man. In your ears.
On the page to be said with my mouth to your ears. Hey there, I hope you're doing great. I know this episode is particularly long, so I'm going to keep this short. Plus, I'm not on my microphone, so you probably can hear my dishwasher in the background right now. But hey, I just want to say thanks for making 2023 such a great year for us, and we hope to make 2024 even better. If you're not doing so already, please make sure that you are subscribed or following the show, so that way you get announcements and alerts to when the next episode comes out. And also give us a follow over on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok. All of our social media accounts are directly linked in our show notes below. And we would love to connect with you outside of the show. And also, liking and subscribing and sharing the show with other people is an amazing way to help us grow and help support us in a way that's free and easy for you to do. And if you'd like to support our show further, we do now have a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/hightailing through history, and for a few bucks a month, then you can help support our show, help what we're doing around here, help our show grow, and get some extra content as a thank you. We have bonus episodes called half-baked episodes, behind-the-scenes content, extra interviews, things like that. That's over at patreon.com/hightailing through history. Next up, I have a little walk down memory lane with some of the most popular toys of the 20th century. So with that, let's puff pass it on to part 2.
All right.
All right, Katie. Well, you had a little bit of 90s nostalgia in yours. I'll have a little bit in mine too. So, some of our most beloved and nostalgic toys have some interesting history behind them. Sometimes how they were created related to big historical events or figures, or their arrival ignited historic reactions or revolutions and how toy making evolved. So for my half of the episode today, I'm going to go through some of the most beloved toys of the 20th century that have an interesting little backstory to them. I feel like some of these you might know, some might be completely new, or you've heard a story about it, but it's not the right story. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So
this I can't wait to hear.
I know, like, technically when this airs, this is going to be past Christmas time, but I thought people might still be in like that holiday glow, between Christmas and Hanukkah, Festivus, Yule, New Year, all that sort of stuff. You got
Indeed.
it all going on. So I thought that we'd still
Technically,
be in the glow of it.
probably. And if you
Yeah.
celebrate the 12 days of Christmas, if that's your thing,
Yeah.
technically it doesn't end till January 6th, the Epiphany Day. So you got time.
Really, we're right in the middle of all the festivities. Kicking off the 20th century with one of the most iconic toys of all time, with its connection to one of America's most recognizable and also iconic presidents, Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes.
The teddy bear. Yeah.
Oh, duh. Here's me. I'm like,
Yeah.
big horse.
Oh, yeah.
Dumbass.
The teddy bear. Yeah, the teddy bear. So in case you didn't know, Roosevelt was a naturalist and a conservationist, right? That was like part of his whole legacy. And in the early 20th century, I love this because like a lot of conservational, I don't love this. It's like ironic to me, I should say. A lot of conservationists were also big game hunters.
Mm-hmm.
Which to my mind, I know there's probably people listening that I'd be like, yeah, duh, Laurel, that makes sense. But in my mind, they're very contradictory. So beyond the fishing and hunting, for food and animal-based resources in which the whole
Mm-hmm.
animal's getting used, and there's, reasons, especially like spiritual
Keep
or cultural
splatter.
reasons, there you go, around hunting and fishing.
Stomach, I mean. Sorry, it was stomach.
But some would like shoot a bear or like
Mhm.
like a lion or an elephant and get it mounted and put it in the smoking room of their house and then stand there with a cigar and a whiskey and like tell their friend next to him and be like, you see this big brute? I tracked it down and shot it myself.
Mhm.
Like truly magnificent creatures. We must really protect them and their environment.
How terrifying to be walking around your house at night, though. Like,
the grizzly, like, no,
I would
stop
shit
it.
my pants. Like, lightning strikes, I'm like, "Gah!"
And that's the classic horror movie thing, or like someone's wandering around the house. There's got
Every
like a suit of
time.
armor, and there's like a grizzly bear that's
Always.
stuffed, and then like the lightning flashes, and it's just
Yep.
terrifying face and claws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do it. My,
We need to be filmmakers.
yeah. Should do. But, no, my constitution is not. I can't walk around my house and have, I'm looking for real monsters, not pretend monsters. Stop faking me out like that, man.
I don't need that. So yeah, there they are, conservationists and whatever that. And so Theodore Roosevelt was a naturalist and conservationist, and on one of his hunting trips on the Mississippi Delta, 1902, early in his presidency, he went down there with the sole goal, like the main idea is to hunt a black bear. It said that he searched the area for days and didn't see a single black bear, but his hunting companions found an old and injured black bear and then tied it to a willow tree and said, look here, Mr. President, now you can bag yourself a black bear and we can go on home. This will be great. And, claim your victory kind of thing. And Roosevelt was horrified. And he said, a man of honor could never, I couldn't do that. That's not an honorable thing to do.
Mm-mm.
No, and you're right.
He is right.
You're right, Teddy. It's not. It's not an honorable thing to do at all. So he asked that the bear. This is what I assume here from how the story is told. But he asked that quickly euthanize, but of its misery because it's sick and old and dying.
Mhm.
And this story captures the attention of the country. They're like, oh, our president, what a man, what a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man, some might say. An editorial cartoonist for the Washington Post, Clifford K. Berryman, created a series of cartoons of the event. He's like showing the bear as this small, it's like wide eyes and scared. It's a youthful face. It's just like, oh, it's a little tiny, poor, helpless bear kind of thing. And in Brooklyn, candy store owner Morris Mictum and his wife Rose saw a marketing opportunity. And Rose started sewing a stuffed version of a little teddy bear and placed it in their store window and called it Teddy's Bears.
Oh.
And it was immediately sold. And so Rose just basically made as many as her little hands would allow. And yeah, so they called them Teddy's Bears in honor of the president.
Yeah.
Factory production began in 1903 when Rose, obviously couldn't keep up with the demand with all of her hand sewing, right? I wrote, it reminds me of Happy Gilmore, in the movie Happy Gilmore. Or,
never seen it.
Ben Stiller.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's on the list.
That's right. Ben Stiller is like a caretaker at a nursing home, and he's a real asshole. And he's having the little old ladies like sewing quilts and stuff like that. And he's on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, these are handmade quilts sewn by little grandmas, and like, it's a pleasure doing business with you kind of thing. And this little lady, she's like, my fingers hurt. He goes, I'm sorry, what's that? She's like, my fingers hurt. And he goes, well, now your back's gonna hurt from pulling plum on duty. It's just, he's a jerk. Anyway, so that's what it made me think of. My fingers hurt.
Nursing home abuse.
It's such a silly movie, but it's good. Anyway, coincidentally, a German company named Steiff just happened to be also making stuffed bears because they just thought that would be a good thing to do. And they also did that in 1903 and sold 3,000 of them to a department store in Manhattan. Now, although Roosevelt didn't like the nickname Teddy, at one point he called it an outrageous impertinence. Just the most 1904 thing to say,
So funny. Like, just the way he verbiages things is way too much for me.
It's interesting man. But he did think like leaning into this teddy bear thing would have been a good idea on the campaign trail. And when he ran for like re-elections, like election, because he became president because McKinney was shot, so he ran for re-election, I guess technically, in 1904, and he displayed one of the Mictum teddy bears in the White House, and that was like his little thing, and it worked. It was this cute little kind of little bear, and it did the trick, and it also helped the sales of the teddy bear in general, and to the point where even the German company Steiff adopted the American name teddy bear.
Yeah,
because they're just stuffed animals that look like bears, but they just went with the teddy bear after that. That's what it was called around the world after that. It was a teddy bear.
Still is.
Yeah, so cute. I love this part though. The sweet, innocent little toy is not without its controversy though. And although it was a very small minority of people, I thought it was worth mentioning because it's just, it actually made me ha out loud. Because there's always somebody, right? There's always somebody that's going to have like a disagreement about something. It doesn't matter how sweet something is. Someone's going to be like, excuse me. Actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
I'm here to rain on the parade.
The problem was that little girls would like the teddy bear over a human-like doll and would therefore become less nurturing to babies and the birth rates would decline. And I put in LOL.
Katie.
What? Now, something to keep in mind is that this is the same time period when child labor was a common practice, although it is waning by this point, thanks to Upton Sinclair and new labor laws and things like that. But the jungle, there it is. Everybody read it. But there was this time when people were like, maybe just let our kids be kids for a little bit. Like let them play with their stuffed animals and have a little bit of joy in their lives instead of sending them to a factory,
right.
That kind of thing. And I know that's privilege speaking, being able to say like, we need everyone in our family to work in order to get by, but
or we can't pay rent.
Right. Just saying like child labor laws were coming into play.
Okay, but then when little Timmy is done at sewing after his 6-hour shift, he can come home and play with his teddy bear. How about that?
Right. From the very early 1900s on, the teddy bear has been beloved by both children and adults alike and is seen as both a plaything and also a source of comfort in turbulent times. My source for that actually mentioned that during World War II that there were soldiers that would sometimes have a little teddy bear in their rucksack and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Can understand that. So next up, we have Lincoln Logs. Yes.
A personal favorite.
Yeah, I remember you did have some.
Oh, you never had Lincoln Logs?
No. I played with them at like babysitters' houses and stuff. I didn't own any myself.
That's sad.
It's all right.
You could have always come in to use mine.
Into them. Okay. Wasn't really that into them. It's all right.
Oh, okay.
So it's one of the most popular toys of the 1920s, and it was inspired by earthquake-resistant architecture and was created by Frank Lloyd Wright's son, John.
Of course it was.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
The Wrights are so brilliant.
I had a connection to them, right? I had no idea about this. So the Wright family are from Oak Park, Illinois, so it's not too terribly far from us. So there's a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright houses in the area, in the city, up in southern Wisconsin as well, too. So we have a lot of them around in our area. And Frank Lloyd Wright, as well as around the world, but he is, I would say, and maybe I don't know if this is like the geographical proximity that is making me say this, but I would say he is the most famous architect, or at least the most famous American architect in the world. Or,
probably,
I'd
because
say
I couldn't name another
3.
one.
Right.
Like I don't know the architects that put together like big cathedrals, and I probably should.
Yeah,
I don't know.
so that's what I'm saying. Maybe it might be like the geographical proximity where I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
him because
definitely
you know,
probably one of the most famous American architects without a doubt.
sure.
Because again, I couldn't name another one.
His son John was the second of 6 children that were born to him and his wife, and he later decided to follow in his dad's footsteps and become an architect.
Hmm.
Though he didn't have any proper schooling, he did manage to get a job as a designer for architect Harrison Albright. Just blag your way into that job. That's cool. But he did
I
it. He got some
mean,
commissions and it
my
worked, you
dad
know.
is so and so. All right, you're hired. Like, probably
Yeah.
not that hard.
Whether or not he knew what he was doing, but he got some commissions. So it gave him some experience. And then he's like, I want to continue my education. So I'm going to go to Austria and work for Otto Wagner.
Oh,
But I
nice.
need a little help to get me over there. Father, can I have just a little financial boost to go over to Europe and apprentice for this man? And Frank writes back a letter. Says, I'd like to know what Otto Wagner can do for you that your father can't.
Ooh,
All right, Dad, I was just trying to pave my own way, but okay,
yeah,
sure,
dude.
gotcha. Yeah, so he becomes his father's apprentice and he goes to Tokyo with him to start work on this major commission, which was the Imperial Hotel. And after 16 months of working on this project, John and his father had this argument over all of John's unpaid wages
Mm,
and salary for this.
don't work for
And
family.
yeah, and so his dad fired him. I was
Yeah.
like, oh. I found out, this is
Ouch.
just one quick article just to like learn about Lincoln Logs, but I was like, oh, I don't know how much I actually like Frank Lloyd Wright as a human being. You know, like there were some not nice things that he was. I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, so his
Hmm.
dad, or sorry, John has kind of had it with his dad there. He's like, all right, fine, fired. I'm gonna find my own way. He's no longer an architect, but he has some of these architect skills, and he tries to make a living designing and selling wooden toys to Chicago's famous, though now defunct, department store chain, Marshall Fields.
Mm.
I know.
That was a Chicago company?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah.
It wasn't in New
The
York?
store. No, because there's Macy's.
Oh.
Theirs was always Macy's. Ours was always Marshall Fields.
Oh, my age is showing. I
Ours.
didn't realize they were
Jesus.
different.
It's okay. Well, because Macy bought Marshall Fields.
That's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those bastards.
Yeah. So the Marshall Fields downtown is now at Macy's. So John uses his father's design from the Imperial Hotel, which were like these interlocking piece, like joints, like just like a Lincoln log, the interjoint. Yeah. And that's what made it earthquake resistant. And it was just interlocked like that.
Yeah.
John later also created something called Wright blocks, which were just classic building blocks, and they had kind of a similar sort of interlocking function, but they weren't Lincoln logs, which is what really took off for him. The naming of the popular toy, however, is occasionally debated, though there really seems to be kind of like the one main accepted answer. Some say it was just a little nod to his dad, because his dad's last name was Lincoln before he changed it to Lloyd.
Oh.
Now, the more popular and accepted answer, however, is that it was evocative of the old American frontier and Abraham Lincoln, and
who lived in a cabin,
capitalizing on this wave of American patriotism that was coming out around, the wake of World War I, like,
sure,
we won America, that kind of thing. So he's like really trying to capture the spirit of that. And it came with instructions on how to build 2 famous log cabins, Abraham Lincoln's and fictional Uncle Tom's Cabin from Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel of the same name. So it came with instructions on how to build those couple log cabins. Lincoln Logs were inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame in 1999 alongside the Duncan Yo-Yo, the hula hoop, roller skates, radio flyer wagon, the little red wagon, and the Viewmaster.
Oh, what's that?
A Viewmaster. So Viewmaster, I almost did the Viewmaster for this. It was I had one.
Click through the pictures.
They still exist, but I had an old one from like 86 or something, and it was blue, and it was like they look like little binoculars, and you put like a little disc in there that had
my babysitter had one.
You go and it would be 3-dimensional pictures, and that was actually something that got developed. I want to say during like World War II sort of time.
Oh, okay.
Shoot, it was originally built to be used as a way to do like 3D imaging for some sort of piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Like I said, I nearly did that one. So I did read a little bit on it, but since I didn't write about it, it didn't stick in my brain. So,
Gotcha.
but it did have some interesting history. But yeah, the Viewmaster was a 3-dimensional like projector slide projectors thing that you could look at.
Yeah.
Mine had, I had like a Sesame Street one, I had a Fraggle Rock one, and then I had one that was just like popular cartoons, like Saturday morning cartoons, which had like He-Man on there and Muppet Babies and something like that. Like it had a bunch of
He-Man?
Yeah.
He-Man's worth that.
It's fun. Viewmaster. Hey, Katie, did you know that pop-up books have some weird and lengthy history behind them?
I did not.
Pop-up books, yeah. Now, honestly, I thought pop-up books existed because somebody at the publishing company was just like, hey, like, what if we make the pictures like pop out in people's faces? Like, maybe we can make them come alive.
Very
like,
exciting.
That might be a cool thing. Like, let's work on that, right? But I found out pop-up books weren't originally meant for the little kiddies. And that they were instead made for scholarly adults.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me it was pornography. I was like, whoa.
Made them for tits, basically. No, it's students of mathematics, science, navigation, technology, medicine, and philosophy.
Interesting.
So the moving flaps and the pictures and stuff like that were particularly helpful in illustrating concepts in these subjects. And I was thinking, like, yeah, having once been an anatomy and kinesiology student,
say it would be great for anatomy because there's a lot of little.
So I'll put the picture up here. There it is of
why didn't
the anatomy
they keep that?
book. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
What a great idea.
How much easier would anatomy have been to learn if you had a fun pop-up book that you could interact with?
Yeah, I loved it, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And now you can see like an anatomy book, how that's been put together. I'm like, oh, what a great idea. And as time went on, the invention of the printing press allowed for advancements in bookmaking, as well as making them more accessible too. So like more people could read. The growing middle class looked to books made for children to help with teaching manners, numbers, letters, religious concepts, and then, of course, like entertainment too. But the pop-up book format was used for that purpose. Lift a flap, number 1, the apple for A, things like that. Though the pop-up book, as we might think of it today, goes back to the 19th century in terms of actual pop-up pictures and that kind of stuff. The pop-up book's origin story goes all the way back to 1121 CE, which is how it stands at this point, unless historians find any books that go further back. But as of right
at the end of the Viking Age, man.
Yeah. We've got stuff. Me and my historian friends, we've got a bunch of things in our archives out back there.
I catalog.
Just look through it. Like it's like the Indiana Jones warehouse, at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the whole thing.
Right.
Anyway. So we have the earliest surviving manuscript had a bunch of flaps and things to open in it. It's kind of like the Marauders map. It opened up like that, So yeah, that goes back to 1121, and then the first volvel, which was a spinning dial, that dates back to 1250. And as you might be able to imagine, the nature of these books, their little strings and flaps and tabs and moving pieces of paper, they're challenging to preserve. So
yeah,
like they're trying to do the best they can with preserving these books. But yeah, there are a lot of different examples of them throughout history. And I think my favorite thing that I learned about with the pop-up book was how it was often used in mysticism as well. Ramon Julia. Oh man, I hope I got that. It was Catalan Spanish. So Ramon Julia. He was a Catalan mystic. He was born near Mallorca in 1232, 1233 sort of time. And his writings not only helped develop the Romance Catalan language, so there's that, which is a really cool achievement in your life to have done, but he also influenced the Neoplatonic mysticism throughout Europe in the medieval times, and then again through the initial phases of the Age of Enlightenment when everyone was like really into philosophy, which we were talking about with Christina of Sweden a couple episodes back too. His teachings were intended to support Roman Catholic missionary work, like why we as missionaries for the Catholic Church go out and do what we do.
Mhm.
But it was also used to try and unify a bunch of different branches of thought and ideas and spirituality.
Get everybody on the same
Branches
page.
of knowledge. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the reason why he's often brought up in the history of the pop-up book is that he would often use those vowels, the dials, in calculating dates and then showing astrological positions of stars and to illustrate and predict spiritual and mystical ideas. Ramon. So moving on to the board game that destroys relationships and lives.
Oh, Monopoly.
Monopoly. Monopoly. That's the one.
You don't bring that up in our house.
Folks, I've seen with my eyes and heard with my ears some of the most outrageous shit Katie has said to her lovely partner, Blake. To the point where I'm just like, I'll just sit in my little corner and count my money because I'm like, oh no.
Listen.
He's so patient.
All ties in love and everything are out the door when Monopoly is on the table.
Oh. And so it's the best-selling Christmas toy of 1937, which is pretty interesting because it's right in those Great Depression years. Right. Towards the end of it, sure, but right in there.
Still.
And I think that means something. You know what I mean? Like well, I think now it's grown into something where it could be such a violent game and really create some problems.
Always is too.
But maybe at this time it wasn't so bad. But the concept of it is interesting, especially, like I said, Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time period, the original game included the origin story right on the box. And it was that an unemployed man by the name of Charles Darrow came up with the game as a way to pass time with his family and friends. During the Great Depression, he's like, hey, we're
when all
unemployed.
They had was bacon, grease, and bread.
Yeah.
And that's how they lived. Did you know our grandfather ate bacon grease sandwiches during the Great Depression?
Yeah, people ate all kinds of things that, needed to do what they needed to do.
Yeah, but like Mom said that and I just dead ass like stared at her and I was like, was it good? And she looked at me, she's like, I don't know that they were worried about that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I feel you. But damn, have you tried it?
Sounds pretty gross, actually. But so yeah, and his whole thing was he brought Monopoly to the game company, Parker Brothers, very famous game company, Parker Brothers, in 1934, and eventually became a millionaire, which really gives the energy of that, like, you too can become a millionaire if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, sonny, and invent an amazing board game. I got to use my 1930s radio voice on that one because we are actually in the 1930s. So I was really looking forward to it. I was like, yes, it's 1930s.
You should do a story on Seabiscuit.
Yeah, Harry comes around the corner. He's like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's in the 30s, so.
Okay, perfect. I'll just do it like that the entire time and no one will want to listen to it.
Oh, I would.
Stop with the stupid voice. I'm like, I can't
help it.
I can't help it.
It's like telling me not to be violent during Monopoly. It's not going to happen.
But hey, here's the thing. Do you know that the story that Monopoly puts on his box, it's not true? What? And the real story is actually much more sad and kind of shows like this dark side of capitalism, which is really funny because that's what the game is about.
Oh, yeah.
And the parallels are really interesting.
It's a really crushing game. You ever notice that? Like when everyone just buys you out and you just sit there sadly as your entire life whittles away before your eyes and your little fake ass paper money.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why you feel like that. Okay. So Monopoly actually began in 1903 as a little game called the Landlord's Game.
Oh boy.
Invented by a woman named Lizzie Magie.
Oh. An angry
Lizzie worked as a typist and a stenographer in Washington, D.C. at what was called the Dead Letter Office, which is like where all the misrouted mail, this was a repository for lost mail in the country. Now that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure it's not as fun in my head. Yeah. I'm like, I want to go where all the letters come to die. And what is your job there? Like what I needed to know everything about that. But anyway, that was what Lizzie did. But she was also a writer. She was an artist. She wrote poetry, would appear in plays, and even patented a little gadget for the typewriter that allowed different sizes of paper to go through,
Oh,
which then allowed for more words to get on a single page because it allowed more space for the
you could adjust the margins, in
margins.
other words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. That's how I read it,
Okay.
which is great. She's a little inventor as well. And she invents a little game called the Landlord's Game, which was based on the teachings of anti monopolist Henry George, who argued that governments didn't have the right to tax labor, only to tax land. The game was patented in 1904 and then a patented revision 20 years later in 1924. But she pitched the idea to Parker Brothers in 1910 and they decided against publishing. They're like, no, not for us right now.
Then
Her
the Great
game
Depression hit.
board, yeah, right. Her game board looks very similar to the Monopoly board that we know. So hopefully I have a picture of it up here. So as opposed to games before where there was a beginning and the end, think of like Candyland or Chutes and Ladders. There's a beginning to the
Sure.
game, there's an end to the game.
Yep.
But Monopoly was the first game board or the landlord's game where you could go around and around and around and around and around. Yeah. And there was no stopping.
The
You just
torture
have the
never
next round.
ends.
It just kept going and going.
To me, it really
There's-
symbolizes that vicious cycle of, I just got to make it to payday, which is like pass and go. And you're just sitting there
Mhm.
like, just praying for the next
Yeah.
one. Then the landlord takes all your money and, oh my God, boy, does this feel familiar.
Yeah. Yep. There it is. There it is.
And then your
right
relationship
there.
ends.
There was a go to jail spot. There was a
Yeah.
public park, which was later became free parking. But
Yeah.
then there's properties that you bought and railroads and on utilities and all these different things. It was very, very similar gameplay.
It's really horrible. Now that you're putting it out there, I'm like, why do we fucking play this? This game sucks.
Right. No, and her idea, and this is what really is kind of sucks about this whole thing, is that well, she had a vastly different intent for an idea for the gameplay. In Monopoly, you try to accumulate wealth and properties in order to crush your foes under the mighty weight of your little Scotty dog token, which is my favorite token. Unless I wanted to also use the top hat and give my opponent seal razzle dazzle, that would be. That's how I did that. Scotty dog or top hat, nothing else.
Anyway, what I picked.
What would you be?
I'm trying to remember what the original ones were because there's a T-Rex now, and I always pick that one because obviously.
There's the car, there's the hat, there's the little Scotty dog, there's the thimble, there's the shoe, and there's an iron.
It was usually the car, and then I would just be sad and pout the entire time if I didn't get what I wanted.
Cool.
Because
that sounds like a good way to do it.
I mean, listen, I was like 7 when we played this, Laurel, and I was a younger sibling, so that's
totally get it.
Just what totally you do.
So, yeah, and that was the thing. You just bankrupt your opponents into submission, really.
By the way, Laurel's really good at it.
Am I good at Monopoly? Is that a thing? Is that a skill I have?
That is why I turned into such a vicious Monopoly player. Here we go. History you don't know about. You would crush the shit out of me every time. And I got so bent out of shape about it that I internalized that for years. And now when I play Monopoly, I'm like, I'm going to crush my foes under my heel of capitalism so that they don't even have the strength to live their normal daily lives outside of this game. So yeah.
So sorry.
I mean, don't be sorry. You can apologize to everyone who's played Monopoly against me.
Wow. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. But
no, it was great.
Lessons taught, lessons learned. It's something. It's funny because like there's some games that you play with certain family members, right? And they're really good at them. Like Christian's really good at Scrabble. To the point where I actually don't really enjoy playing with him because he's so good at it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he thinks of like the best words and I'm not that eloquent. Well, Yahtzee, which is not really a game of skill necessarily, it's just like, it's luck, right?
Yeah.
So it's right. Yeah. Anyone can win.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime I want to play that, Christian's like, no, I don't want to play that against you ever again. I was like, why? He's like, you won Yahtzee. And I was like,
yeah, that's the point. It's like,
you don't win at the game. He's like, you've won it. You've done it. Certificate of completion. You've got like the highest score I've ever seen ever on Yahtzee, which is true. I got actually a bunch of Yahtzees in one game.
Good for
just
you.
a bunch of them. Like I had to write them off on the side of the paper. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just lucky.
I remember
like,
you were
trying to flip the board. He was so pissed. He was like,
I remember I never played Yahtzee as a kid because you were so good at it. And I get it. It's a game of skill, but you would play it with mom a lot at the dining room table.
Okay.
I wouldn't play it because I was I was, what would you say, intimidated by, like, because you won Yahtzee a lot. So laugh as you will, Laurel. You won Yahtzee a lot. Yahtzee. What's another one that you like? You pwned at, and it's probably given me a complex for all these years. Were you the? It's okay. I'll get over it. Except for Monopoly, I'll never get over that. But
was it Uno? Oh, Clue. Oh, yeah, I'm really good at Clue.
Yeah, she's amazing at Clue. To the point where her husband just...
Oh, that's right.
I'll let you
He's
tell
so stroppy, isn't he? He's sometimes like playing with the towel. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
He's a poor loser.
He is a poor loser. He is.
But yeah, so for whatever reason, you're really good at board games.
Okay. I didn't realize I had that skill, but now I'm going to put that on my resume and hope for the best.
You should do.
Mm-hmm. So in Maggie's game, her gameplay was divided into two sets of rules. Monopolist, which is kind of like what we understand it as today for the most part, and then anti-monopolist rules. But the goal of the game was to demonstrate the evils of accruing vast amounts of wealth at the expense of others.
Right.
Like you said, like you sit there and you're like, you get bankrupted and you're like, this is terrible. And this is so sad and isolating and awful. Right.
Yeah. You feel like your like soul crushed from your body, dude.
Yeah. And that's what she's trying to highlight is like, when you're doing these things at the expense of others, like that's when capitalism is bad. That's the point that she's trying to make, at least.
As your sister,
whether you agree to that or not.
That's just how the game is played, Katie. And you're like,
yeah. Just how it goes. And she even said to a reporter in 1906, quote, in a short time, I hope a very short time, men and women will discover that they are poor because Carnegie and Rockefeller maybe have more than they know what to do with.
Yep. Preach, sister.
I get it, sis. Yeah. The game was published by a small Chicago and small New York companies, but it really didn't gain a lot of traction, unfortunately. However, a homemade version of it passed around all different kinds of circles. East Coast intellectuals, frat boys at Williams College, Quakers in Atlantic City and on the East Coast. And it did so. I know it did so for decades. And that was actually a very common thing. When I was researching this, that board games or, popular games would end up getting a homemade version of it and they kind of got passed around, bootleg version. Right. Exactly. And so I also think that's how we get a lot of these like home rules, as you mentioned with Monopoly, like a lot of groups of people have certain ways that they play it.
Yeah. If you land on free parking, all the money goes in the middle so that there's some chance for those who are bankrupt to pull themselves out of poverty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it was one of these homemade versions. In fact, it was actually the Quaker version because there's spellings on the Quaker homemade boards that transferred over to like the actual version of Monopoly. So they're like, oh, it's one of the Quaker versions. That's it. And that came across the radar of Charles Darrow. So Charles Darrow, yes, he does get the credit for it and he gets his name put on the Monopoly box, but
it was a lady. It was Maggie.
Yeah. So he came across this game while playing with some of his Quaker friends, and Darrow was indeed an unemployed engineer during the Great Depression, playing the game with his friends. And he's like, well, this is a really cool game. Like, what are the rules to it? And his friend was like, oh, well, it was invented by a lady. We don't have like written rules for it. This is just how people are playing it kind of thing. And he was like, what? How about we write the rules down? Can we write the rules down? And he was like, okay. Because what he was trying to do was basically have
copyrighted.
Packaged.
Yeah.
Right. So
clever boy.
He then goes, so then he goes to Parker Brothers and has this written account of how he thought of the game, which is how the Monopoly story gets on the board, except that's not exactly true. Now, because again, remember, she's had these patents for the landlord game.
Yeah.
Like she has patents for it. She's got receipts, as the kids say. And in 1935, Darrow and Peter Brothers, Parker. See where I got Peter Parker? Did you hear what was happening there with my brain? So the Parker Brothers, not the Peter Parker brothers. they get a patent for Monopoly, and it sells like hotcakes. Everyone's like, this game is amazing. I love
I
it.
love my soul being crushed from my body into
Yeah.
oblivion. Who
Yeah.
doesn't?
And the rules get changed, right? So yeah,
Mm.
he takes it and makes it the Monopoly rules. Um, in November 1935, the Parker brothers get hip to the idea that maybe Monopoly isn't Darrow's original idea. And they
Mm.
see Maggie's 1924 patent for the game to the point where they're that worried about it that George Parker himself goes to a now 70-year-old Lizzie Maggie and says, hey, we want to sell your game as well as buy 2 others that you've created. Here's $500.
Oh,
And
come
she's
on.
like, oh, wow. I'm so glad that my game, because again, her purpose of the game is not only for the entertainment, but it's to teach people.
$500, really?
Yeah. It's to teach people about like economics and trying to
Mhm.
really teach like the 99% about what's happening in the 1% and be like,
Correct.
hey, this is like how these things are working.
Yeah.
She's trying to make a social point with it too. And so
Mhm.
she's like, well, I'm really happy that this game is going to get out to the masses. Thank you so much. And Lizzie's thrilled, but royalties were not included
I knew
in
you
her
were going to
deal.
say that.
And they were included in Charles Darrow's deal with Parker Brothers. And Parker Brothers did buy all the games. They bought the Landlord's game and then 2 other games that she had invented that she had put out as well, or attempted to put out. They bought all 3 of those games for $500 and then quickly discontinued them.
Those bastards.
So that's when Lizzie goes from happy to pissed, and she's like, "Oh, great! I didn't see a single extra cent beyond that." She ends up passing away in 1948, not having made any more off the sales of her games. And she would have unfortunately been lost to history, except for economics professor Ralph Anspach, who taught at San Francisco State University, who basically created the antithesis of monopoly and named it, you guessed it, anti-monopoly. And it wasn't too long before he gets the cease and desist letters from Parker Brothers, right? Like, you're making exactly monopoly, but reversed, which is one of the sets of rules that was made from Ms. Maggie. And instead of ceasing and desisting, though, Ansbach went to court for it for over a decade. Yeah. And part of his defense is looking into the history of the game. And he could prove, again, he's got the receipts of Lizzie's patents. He could prove that the game existed for decades before Darrow then brought it to Parker Brothers. And that was when Lizzie's name was brought back. And like historians, like toy historians and like pop culture historians have really jumped onto her story and put the spotlight on the figure that was written out.
Yeah.
Lizzie Maggie. So that's Monopoly.
Man, you had to know when you brought that one up, girl.
Yeah. And so next I have a few mid-century toys that were created out of World War II inventions that didn't quite go as planned. But then the people thought, hey, kids will like this. Which that sounds scary. Hey, let me make up this thing for military and war use purposes. Oh, it didn't work out so well? That's okay. Give it to the children. That's good. So first up, we have the Slinky. The Slinky was the most popular Christmas toy for 1945, and it was accidentally created in 1943 by engineer Richard James, who was attempting to design a device that the Navy could use to secure equipment on ships while there was rocking and movement. And the story goes, there we go, some air quotes there. The story goes, it is said that he dropped the coiled wires that he was working with. He was using coiled wires to try and make some sort of little gate, to keep everything held on to. He drops these coiled wires, which instead of just kind of falling to the ground, did the Slinky thing, went shitink, 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 shitink. Yeah. And so he's actually like having to chase after it, which was like a funny visual to me.
Extremely.
And as he's chasing it, he's like, well, this is kind of fun. I can't use it for my purposes of what I'm trying to invent, but this is kind of interesting. And with a $500 loan, Richard and his wife, Betty, founded the James Industries in 1945, and they started making the Slinky.
Yeah.
Richard asked Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia to let them do a demonstration during Christmas shopping hours, and his 400 Slinkies that were in stock were completely sold out in less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
People were like, what is this? This is amazing.
Great.
Shitink, 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 shitink. During the 60s, however, Richard left his family to join a religious cult because it's the 60s, but also we just took one hell of a left turn.
Yeah, we did. That
Yeah.
side quest came out of nowhere.
And sadly, he passed away in 1974. Betty really doesn't have her husband. Not only was he in a cult, but now he's passed away. She is a single mother of 6. She goes all in financially on the Slinky.
Oh, God.
Remortgages the house. And she takes it to a toy show in New York in 1963, where it catches a second wind mercifully and sells out. And then thankfully from then on out, Slinky just kind of became a life of its own. And Betty and her family never had to worry about money again, thankfully.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which is great. And also a little interesting fun fact, during the Vietnam War, soldiers would sometimes take one of those metal Slinkies and use it as an extendable antenna. So they would like put it over them and then throw it over a tree branch, and they would get a better signal because of the metal. I don't know how science works with that, but that's what they would do sometimes. And I was like, that's good. So you get a clearer, stronger signal.
That's amazing.
A second World War II whoopsie toy was Silly Putty.
Oh, yes.
Now, Silly Putty was also created in 1943, but was later the top Christmas present in 1955. So it had its popularity a little bit later.
Okay.
Historians are not quite sure who to credit with the invention of Silly Putty, but everyone does agree that it was a whoopsie daisy. So, you know how during World War II there were material rations, cloth, tin, metal, glass, fabric,
and
rubber.
The government subsidized people to grow hemp, remember? That was in our episode on, which episode was that?
With Half-Baked History.
Yes.
The history, history of cannabis. So the scientists were working on some sort of rubber alternative because they needed rubber. And the story goes that some U.S. government-sanctioned chemists were working on said rubber issue, and they came up with this weird material that just couldn't really hold a rigid, solid shape. It kind of was, it would stretch, it kind of melted a little bit, it like would bounce. So as a rubber substitute, it totally sucked. But as a toy, they're like, well, this is kind of fun. Squish, squish,
right?
Squish, 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 you know?
Can you imagine? You'd be like, well, this is not at all useful or the goal, but Frank, isn't this thing great?
Yeah. And they just packaged it and like, Silly Putty, here you go. And the weird thing is it debuted about $1, like a little less than $1, which was kind of expensive for the 50s. You know, that's like an expensive item.
Yeah.
But the price hasn't really changed. Like if you go and you buy some Silly Putty, it's not like 50 cents or anything. It's still $1 for the most part, you know? So
yeah. And it's right next to that
Silly
stuff
Putty.
where if you jam your hands into it, it farts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Flarp.
Okay. I was going to say kids my age would know it as GAC, which originally came out from Nickelodeon. GAC, Flarp, Silly Putty. Now, the late 70s is where we get a pivot of toys becoming electronic. This is where it begins. So in 1977, the Atari 2600 game system.
Here it is.
Biggest toy in 1977. Kicks off video games and just electronics as toys. Huge, right? Atari. Man.
Yep.
So for our next toy, we are going to meet inventor Ralph Baer, who had created a number of different electronic games and devices, such as a voice-activated intercom, an interactive video quiz game, a talking aircraft altimeter, a talking bicycle speedometer and odometer, a programmable remote record changer. Love it. The first light gun video game, which made me think like Duck Hunt sort of thing, like a light gun. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, like I thought Galaga. Interesting. Okay.
Well, light gun video game.
Yeah.
That makes me think that it's like another attachment and not so much like a, not that important. What is important is the talking doormat that he invented, the chat mat. Right? Okay. Now, honestly, you wouldn't need to tell me any more about Ralph Baer after that. For like, as far as I'm concerned, listening to his inventions makes me feel like I know everything I need to know about the man, right? And I adore him.
I made the chat mat.
He sounds like great fun. Chat mat. But I am going to tell you about him because he's cool outside of his inventions, right? So he was born in Germany and came to the United States at the tender age of 16 because of Nazis and anti-Semitism.
That tends to be a problem.
Yeah, and he joins the U.S. Army. He fights or serves overseas in Europe, and he comes back and he gets his engineering degree and works full-time as a defense contractor. And after all those interesting inventions that he has, Baer adds another ticked box to his illustrious list of achievements. And he invents the game Simon, a portable electronic version of the classic Simon Says game.
Oh, no.
So are you familiar with this? I don't know. I don't think anyone much younger than me is going to know. So I'm not sure if you actually would know what this is.
Did we have one?
We did not have one.
Then probably not.
Okay. So Atari had a game called Touch Me, which didn't go over too well because it was obnoxious mostly, The sounds that accompanied the game were described by Bear as raucous.
Oh.
And so like a lot of people didn't really like it. So he and programmer Lenny Cope re-engineered the game to be portable. So it's like not on a gaming system and have 4 tones that were musical and pleasing to the ears.
Okay.
And the final product was this round, sort of spaceship, like flying saucer kind of shaped. And it had 4 colored buttons on top: red, green, yellow, blue. And you would press the corresponding buttons that would light up, and they play their little note in like a certain sequence. And the sequence would get longer and longer. So it was essentially a sequence and memory game. So we go boopy boo boo boopy boop boop boopy boop boop boop, and you go, okay, I have to like get those in that order, and then you try and remember the next sequence on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it debuted in a place that makes so much sense if you've ever played Simon before.
Okay.
The midnight premiere was at Studio 54, and a 4-foot model of it was like hung above the dance floor in 1978.
Studio 54. That sounds familiar.
The disco studio, or the disco nightclub in New York City, is very exclusive.
Okay.
The cool place to go, right?
The cool place.
I would love to time machine back to Studio 54. But anyway, the game itself actually looks like one of those little light up disco dance floors. And at that same sort of time, like it all comes together for Simon, it really does. That same sort of time, a year prior in 77, a little movie by the name of Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg comes out. And it had a similar thing going on with the way the spaceship looked and the way that it communicated and sounded when it's talking and communicating. Like the whole mothership would light up like do 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 do, like that whole thing. Yeah. And there's that whole scene where it's like an orchestra, like do 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 do, yeah. And everyone was like, oh my God, they're talking, this is great, the whole thing. And so that baby Richard Dreyfuss in it. So that really helped the sales of the Simon toy, and it became the Christmas toy of 1979, and that sales continued and like peaked in the 80s. So now that we're in the 80s, I feel like a trip with like nostalgia toys wouldn't be complete if I didn't include the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Oh, yep.
And I wanted to mention them. They don't really have like an insanely interesting history or anything necessarily in terms of how they came about, but it was definitely a turning point in how like gross people got over toys, like kids' toys. Gross behavior, I mean.
Okay.
So the story of the Cabbage Patch Kid doll was printed on the box, much like Monopoly, and it goes a little something like this.
Okay.
Xavier Roberts was a 10-year-old boy who discovered the Cabbage Patch Kids by following a bunny bee behind a waterfall into the magical Cabbage Patch, where he found the Cabbage Patch babies being born. To help them find good homes, he built Babyland General in Cleveland, Georgia, where the Cabbage Patch Kids could live and play until they were adopted.
Aw.
That's a cute story,
innocence,
right?
Innocence, beautiful childhood innocence. I have a feeling you're about to piss all over it.
Sort of, just a little bit. I mentioned how like the late 70s saw the rise in electronic toys. And so in the early 80s, well, I should say like late 70s into the 80s, having these expensive gadgets became a status symbol, both for the kids and the adults.
Sure.
Like it was like, oh, I got little Timmy with the first Walkman, like in the first shipment over from Japan. I got it.
We already have the Atari. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was the Mercedes 80s, right? I mean, the consumerism, the materialism is very high.
And it really hasn't stopped, because I can't tell you how often they're like, you can't play the next Mortal Kombat. You have to have a PlayStation 5. I'm like, I'm poor. I can't afford a PlayStation 5. I'm unemployed, damn it. So a lot of times, like, there's some historians that say, like, maybe the popularity of the Cabbage Patch doll, part of it, a small part of it, maybe for some was like, hey, we're getting back to a simple toy that doesn't have batteries and gadgets and stuff like that. Yeah. I never had one. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
But I feel like I had mine later because I don't remember anything because this was like
No, I never got
pre-Laurel,
the
but the
Cabbage Patch Kid, man. No, I
yeah,
got stuck with a Furby.
lucky you. I wanted one of those so bad.
Oh God, Laurel, it was terrible.
You
Do you
know.
know how often, like, because it sat? Remember how I had like a bin of stuffed animals? It
Mm-hmm.
sat in there and would awaken in the middle of the night, which is nightmare fuel. Those Five Nights at Freddy's, no, that was my bedroom at night when the Furby would be like, "Feed me," and I was like, "Souls." Terrible.
They were kind of creepy and weird. I wanted one
Furby
so bad
scared
though.
me. I did not like Furby. I expected it to like turn into a gremlin, like after you showed me Gremlins, and I just thought it was coming for me. I thought it was getting the steak knives, and yeah, had a lot of weird like childhood trauma that we're unpacking today.
Yeah, got a lot to unpack sometime. Well, 2024 is going to be a new year.
Sure
So.
is.
Healing, the motto. So as I mentioned that the origin story says that they're magical little babies and you could adopt them.
Correct.
Right? So that Babyland general that I mentioned in the story,
Yeah,
it was a real place. That was his store. He called it Babyland General, and he had converted this old medical clinic into a store where he'd have the employees dress up as nurses and have them like walk around and interact with the little baby dolls in their incubators and their
it's kind of
bassinets and
magical,
cribs.
actually.
It's a really cute idea. And I like, as somebody who loves a gimmick, you know what I mean? Like I find the creativity and like the gimmicks for the marketing and stuff. I think that's really interesting.
So it makes it magic for kids.
Yes.
It is a part of the magic because it's an experience, not just an item.
Right. And the kids were really excited about this. It
Hell
was like
yeah.
such a really cool thing. It was, each of the dolls came with adoption papers that would be signed, birth certificate. They got their own individual name.
Like my Build-A-Bear.
Yes, that's what it was. And it was unique. It was special. And the timing of this is perfect because it was because manufacturing had recently become computerized, which means that Xavier and his company, they could have an astonishing amount of randomized computer, generated outcomes, as what these dolls would look like. The hair, the eye color, the skin color, the hairstyle, where the dimples went, if they had freckles, if they didn't have freckles. It was a whole unique thing. Yeah. And Xavier takes these dolls, which he called little people, which was like also at the time that Fisher Price had little people, so there was like a little bit of like, so I think he called them the little people or something like that.
Okay.
But there was a name similarity there, which they later became Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah.
To kind of unique eyes that a little bit more. But he takes these dolls in this massive campaign, this publicity marketing tour, and people ate it up. And the demand for these dolls, even as they were released, was unheard of.
Right.
Now, I mentioned with some of these other stories, some of the toys that I mentioned earlier, they sold out. And people would be like, okay, they sold out. And, that happens. And the manufacturer just have to make more. And people would patiently wait until they came back out again and hit the stores. But the supply doesn't meet the demand. And the manufacturers are just like trying to keep up with this. Now, I'm no economist, but I understand the basics of supply and demand.
Yep.
And this time around, the sellouts, instead of just selling out, people being like, oh, we'll just wait till more come. It turns into this unadulterated chaos.
Oh, God.
Stores that receive shipments would face crowds of people queuing up for hours.
Oh, God.
They'd put the toys out and there would be fist fights over them.
It sounds like a Black Friday thing.
It was like that.
Yeah.
Yep, it was like that. But just every time these shipments of these dolls would come around, anyone who did manage to get their hands on it had to make sure that they could get it up to the checkout, like try to get it to the checkout without it being stolen from you and pay for it. And then once you paid for it, hide that box because as you're walking out of the store, people are coming in and trying to grab the box out of your hands.
Damn.
It was absolute chaos. And people are stealing them from kids. Like kids are like, oh, I'm going to get my Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh my God.
And like kids
on.
Are excited about the doll. They're not looking at this like this is like a scarce thing.
No, this is just a toy that they've been really excited about.
People are like taking it from people. There's a picture of a woman in Texas and like a pile of people like with her hands around a box. Yeah. And another woman has her purse strap like wrapped around her neck like a grip.
Oh my God.
Fucked up. And on top of that, it was the inspiration for the 1996 Christmas classic with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad, Jingle
Oh,
All the Way,
Jingle
the
All the
Action
Way.
Man.
I can't
Hmm.
watch that movie. It stresses me out so
It
much. I
stresses
was
me
like,
out. I
so
can't.
I've realized that I'm not a big one on consumerism.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, if you stole a toy out of my kids' hands, not that I have children, but if I did, I would definitely easily either punch your teeth in or break your nose. You're not getting out of that.
Oh,
Like,
well, right. And it's
if
just
it was
such a
rightfully
weird,
mine, is what I'm saying. I would not go and do that to someone to steal it, but I'd be like,
sure.
bro, I I will defend my kith and kin. We will do this now.
And it was such a weird thing because people weren't doing that for kids' toys of all things, you know. So it was, to have that happen was like super strange and scary and like, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
is everybody okay here? So Cabbage Patch Kids.
So it started
And
there.
and there are also like a few threads that you'll find that you can kind of pick through with this story where it has some similar origins to like Monopoly in terms of like how that came about.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in a few articles as well as one article about a resulting lawsuit and a long legal battle with the woman who claims to have invented the dolls first.
Okay.
So these pop up on sources like Vice and Medium,
Okay.
which are not reliable. I think the most reliable sort of news sources, they have a very specific lens in which they're telling their news stories.
Yeah.
But to try and follow it out from there, you can get a couple more concrete or more
Yeah, like
sound
what's your
sources.
like where are you getting that
Yeah.
material from?
Right.
Yeah.
So according to Vice, and it's short documentary that they did on the topic, and so take this as you will, is all I'm trying to say. The dolls were originally invented by a Kentucky artist named Martha Nelson Thomas, who made the soft body dolls with very similar faces in the early 70s, and she called them doll babies. And she handmade each one. They were all unique and different, and they would be adopted by friends and family and the people that she sold them to at craft fairs. They were a little bit larger, but that was her whole thing, was like, oh, you adopt the doll baby, and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. Vice says that young Xavier Roberts, who owned a gift shop at the time, was 21, saw a doll baby at one of these craft fairs and wanted to sell them in his shop, which Martha declined. So, with them not being copywritten, Xavier thought, well, fine, I'll just make them myself and sell them in my store.
Yeah.
Martha later sued Roberts, and then they settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. But that's where I leave the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know. I would just be interested to see how that like turned out. Like if she have a bunch of witnesses on that would be the only way to know. Like if a bunch of people came forward like, yeah, I bought this from her at this date, like obviously it's hers. I'd be so curious.
I'm thinking she had to have enough. In the documentary, it's like a short video, which if you follow my Vice
article,
thing, the video, the article, the video's embedded in it. Her son has one of the dolls and is talking about it, and like, this is one of the dolls that was made, and I think she probably had like enough friends and family that bought them, or people at craft fairs that bought them, that she had a leg to stand on with that. But yeah, so that's an interesting story. That, and her son's like, it was never about the money. It was more, that's why she didn't file a lawsuit for a little while, but it was just one of those things where the principle of the matter. And I think like
it's her
idea. Made $2 billion or something like that off of it. So yeah. So I think she's like, excuse me, you stole my idea. Like, let's have just like a little bit of credit here. So there's the Cabbage Patch Kids. Now, staying in the 80s, Katie, what do you think happens when you take the beloved teddy bear from early 20th century, and you throw in some inspiration from Lord of the Rings and Disney?
Oh my God, only good things, probably. Something very... I don't know if I know where this is going, but it sounds extremely exciting and possibly something that I would be a consumer of.
Right. Sounds like a lot of fun, right? It's the world's first animatronic toy.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is my big moment, everybody. It's my big moment. Now, I could have gone without telling you the history of this particular toy that I'm about to tell you about. Even though it's got a really cute history, like I could have skipped over it, but it debuted to the world when I did, and was the number one toy for 1985 and 86. Had a cartoon TV series, and very nearly a live action movie, and then just immediately fizzled out 2 years later.
Oh man, that's kind of sad.
So it's created by Ken Forsey, who was originally an engineer, although like we'd say Imagineer before they were called that, I think, who worked on
Obviously.
the creative team for designing attractions at Disneyland.
Yep.
He worked on sculpting the heads for the Country Bear Jamboree
Yep.
and painting the eyes and features on the dolls of Katie's favorite ride.
Good God.
It's a Small World.
Oh, God.
He was so inspired by the animatronics that he was working on. He decided that he was going to start tinkering with them at home.
Oh, inspiring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He left Disney and started his own company called Alchemy, which I just love that name so much. I just have to tell you all, Alchemy. What a cool name for a company.
Uh-huh.
And he was working alongside puppeteers of popular children's show H.R. Puff and Stuff, which, heyo, I love that. And then consulting for this little startup by the name of Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater.
Oh, no. Good God.
Makes sense, right? Like it checks out. But at home, he continues to tinker with animatronics, and he even went so far as to create a script for a little teddy bear, his little adventures in the fantasy world in which he lived. And Teddy Ruxpin was born.
Oh, I don't know this one. You do.
My heart.
This is this is a you thing. No, because I remember this. I remember people were talking and they were like, "Do you remember Teddy Ruxpin?" I was like, "Nope, not at all." And I immediately I'm like, "But hold on, here's me on my phone. Hey, Laurel, do you remember one of those random middle of the day texts you get from me?" And you're like, "Do I?" And I was like, "Oh, sounds like Laurel knows it." They're like, "You're too young." I'm like, "Oh, buzz off. I remember plenty of things prior to my conception and birth." So yes, I remember talking about it with you.
Okay. So for all of you, here is little baby Laurel. I think I don't know, maybe 6 in this. Yeah, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 in this picture that's up right now with my Teddy Ruxpin and my nude Barbie dolls. Teddy Ruxpin always just hung out with Barbie dolls. That was what Teddy did. We read stories together, but then he hung out with the Barbie dolls. Why not? I'd want to hang out with too, to be honest. Yeah, so that's how just loved my little Teddy Ruxpin so much. And Teddy Ruxpin was actually a 16-year-old bear. What? I didn't know that until I was
really?
Like, he's 16 years old. And he came from the magical world of Grundo, specifically born in the southern island called Rilonia. Wish I would remember that better. His best buddy was named Grubby, and it was like this 8-legged orange bug creature. Sometimes people were like, "It's a mammal." I'm like, "Are we sure about that?" I don't know. He was interesting.
You were afraid
Grubby was an interesting little guy.
Come on now.
Yeah. And they were both friends with Grundo's version of Doc Brown, basically, from Back to the Future, who also looked like a whole lot like Maurice from Beauty and the Beast. So here he is. I should probably put a picture of him up here.
Crazy old Maurice.
And then together, the three of them, they thwarted the evil schemes of this crappy wizard named Tweeg, and there were magical crystals, and it was a whole thing.
Damn it, Tweeg.
And Forsey had this really interesting idea of this animatronic teddy bear that kids could read the book, and he would like read it along with you. He'd blink and talk.
Actually, really cool.
It was really cool. Very, very cool. And you'd hear all about his adventures in his world and their little stories. And it was really, I loved reading so much when I was a kid. I really feel like it helped me learn reading these bigger stories too, because he would be saying them and I would be reading them with my eyes and following along. And it was, it's just the magic of storytelling. And big names like Hasbro and Jim Henson, they were like, "This is really impressive. This is cool stuff, but we either don't have a need for it right now, like we don't have any projects we're working on where this makes sense, or we don't want to fund it," depending on, who it is.
Yeah.
But he finally finds his break in former president of Atari, Don Kingsborough.
Oh.
And Don was into it. He was
It's cool.
Yes,
I didn't know he read along with you. That's actually really cool.
So here we go. I'll put a picture up of him here. But he had this like beige vest that went over like a red t-shirt and his little shorts. And the vest was Velcroed. You lift it up. There's a tape deck in the back, and you'd put the cassette tape in there and it would go along to the story. So there were like 60, I think there were 60 books that were written.
Holy
150 songs. They had to make sure it was programmed to go along with the words and with
Yeah.
the songs and everything. So there was a lot of programming that went into this, depending on which tape that you put into the tape deck. It was amazing.
That's a
And
lot of work and effort into it too.
yeah, beginning, and which really says something, because this is at the beginning of January when he meets Don Kingsborough, who's like, yes, I'm into it. I'm going to fund this idea. We're going to get this on shelves. Within early 1985, wasn't quite January, but early 1985, 6 months later, it's September 1985.
Yep.
And they turned it into an idea on paper with a little head on a stick, and it hit shelves September 1985. So in 6 months, just a little nerdo fact for you guys. Atari also had a really quick turnaround time for what ended up becoming probably their worst product, their worst video game.
Okay.
So 5-month turnaround for E.T. So if anyone knows about what happened with E.T. is they ended up in a bunch of landfills and were thrown out and were horribly unsold, and were a big bust. Yeah.
Damn.
So thankfully Teddy Ruxpin did a little bit better, but it was huge. There were, like I said, there were over 150 songs written to go along with these various cassette tapes. The toy is a massive hit, spins off into a cartoon TV series, and almost a live action movie. But the movie fell through when the Toys parent company, World of Wonder, hit financial troubles with one of their other toys that they made. They made laser tag and laser tag guns. And a 19-year-old Leonard Falcon was killed by LAPD, who mistook a laser gun that he had on him for a real gun.
Damn.
And the company went under. It went under in 1987, but a lot of the voice talent went on to do amazing things. So one of them went on to be the voice for Minnie for a long time in cartoons and movies.
Yeah.
Another one for Goofy. Another one went on to become the voice for the Furby.
Oh God! Feed me.
Feed me. One of them it's like a puppeteer for Chucky and like the Child's Play movies, and also like Salem and the Sabrina the Teenage Witch series.
Why are animatronics always like on that borderline of horror and wonder? It's a thin line.
Thin line. Yeah, but they went on to be voice talent and puppeteers for other things. But so that's Teddy Ruxpin. I'm going to leave us in the 80s there. I'm going to conclude my half of the episode. It's been a long one. I'm going to conclude my half of the episode in the 90s, which had a lot of interesting little toys and gadgets, and a lot of them have like fun little backstories, like how the Super Soaker squirt gun was another Moopsie creation by military scientists and engineers, where they're like, we want to have something that compresses water and shoots really far. Hey, let's make the Super Soaker. Hey, this won't work for us quite so well, but we can turn this into a really great squirt gun. Yeah.
Oh, man. The 90s. What an era.
The craze of Pokemon,
Oh, girl.
The Pokemon
Don't even
trading
get
cards.
me started.
And also, I just wrote in also, like, how fucking weird were Pogs?
What's a Pog?
Exactly. I was going to say, you would know what they are, but some of you out there are like, oh my God, Pogs. Yeah, listener, did you forget about Pogs? I didn't. I loved them. I had so many Pogs and so many Slammers. But what I want to end it on for all of us today is one of the weirdest, wildest toy crazes in toy history. The Beanie Baby. I feel like when Thai Inc. dropped the Beanie Baby on the scene, I feel like I was pretty good in that perfect target age range right there as a kid. I was in elementary school, about 4th grade. And I remember like having them up through middle school sort of time. Like when I got to older middle school, right as the time that they were starting to become less popular. So I feel like I was right in that target age range. Yeah, I was like right in it. Now, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the time that they came out, because I don't want to like, trample over your memory and your experience of them.
Yeah.
I feel like you grew up into Beanie Babies. Like you had them, and I know you loved them so much, but you were kind of young to remember like all the facets of it, right?
So to be completely honest with you, my memory of Beanie Babies is that they were always there. And then because I was an Animal Planet kid, I just remember every time they released a new animal, I was excited about that. But I think that had a lot more to do with the attention to detail of the animal, and the fact that I was so obsessed with animals is really
Mm-hmm.
more where the Beanie Baby craze hit me. So, but as
Okay.
far as like a stuffed animal, I was like, yeah, they're cool, but I was just more excited about like the Arctic fox, the Siberian lynx, the manatee, like weird stuff like that where I was like, oh, this is so cool. Yeah, I was a
Yeah.
nerdy kid, but
I just remember, yeah, I remember us both really liking them a whole lot, maybe
mhm,
for our different reasons, but we both had them, loved
mhm,
them. I remember getting like mad as hell at you if you were playing with any of mine. Heaven forbid, it happened a couple times where
did it?
you messed up the tag and a couple
Uh-oh.
times you ripped it off and I lost my mind.
Oh, I don't remember that, so you're good.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good that you didn't. And now, like, if anyone's listening and they're like, that sounds like an extreme reaction.
Well,
Like,
no, because they were supposed to be extremely collectible.
but that was actually exactly what I want to talk about, though, because yes, if you had a pristine hanging tag on it, along with the pristine
Mhm.
Beanie Baby, it therefore made it worth a ridiculously large amount of money, disproportionate to what
Yep.
they cost, like the value.
Yep.
And that's the weird history I want to talk about. So, in case you're younger than Katie and I, or maybe much older, I don't know. Like, I think there's like a window on either side of our
I
age
think
ranges where
people
they're
know
like,
what
what?
Beanie Babies are most of the time.
Think so? Okay. Like, in case you don't know what a Beanie Baby is, just in case, like, it was a small stuffed animal. It was filled with little beanbag pellets, little beans. It's about, I don't know, what do you like 6 to 8 inches long. You're usually laying down or they would be sitting up
Yeah,
depending
they're
on
about
what
six
kind of thing
inches
they were.
long. That's
And
fair.
they cost $5 each, pretty much across the board, $5.
Okay.
They were created and sold by Chicago area company Ty Inc., named after its CEO, H. Ty Warner.
Oh,
And originally, in the early 90s, Ty Inc. made stuffed cats, like much bigger stuffed animals than they were cats. And like there were
as
different
you do.
colors and yeah, he loved it. But their inventory changed in 1993 when they debuted the Beanie Baby at a toy fair in New York in 1993. And they're really cute and simple. It's like a little
Yep.
stuffed animal.
They're
There's a
not
variety of them.
fancy. Yeah.
There's nothing fancy about them. From an elephant to a frog to a lobster
The cat.
to a dog.
Don't forget the cats.
I had all these different kinds. And they all came with a little tag that had their name on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like Legs the frog, Seaweed the otter, Spots the dog, Flash the dog. Like they all had like cute little names
There's
that went
a polar
with them.
bear, a Clydesdale. There's the Chicago Bulls one. Those are the ones that I can see right now.
And then later the tag included the date of birth and like a little ditty, a little poem about the animal. Mm-hmm. So for example, Seaweeds, I looked this one up because Seaweed was one of my favorites. She was so cute. Seaweed is what she likes to eat. It's supposed to be a delicious treat. Have you tried a treat from the water? If you haven't, maybe you otter.
They were so great.
They're cute. Kids love them. They're really popular. The sales are skyrocketing. But here's where things get a little nutty. Mr. Warner and his company introduced some marketing tactics that turn a very popular product into a full-blown craze driven by adults of all people.
Of
right?
course.
Now, to start, and this is like innocent, like this is innocuous enough, in the Chicago area where the company originates, but in the Chicago area, there's a handful of like smart upper middle class women, like soccer moms or whatever, or there's a doctor, a commodities trader, a teacher. Like these are smart ladies. I'm picturing that they're from like Glencoe, Northbrook, Lake Forest sort of area.
North
Those are like
Shore.
the ones I'm thinking of. Yeah. And they're just trying to collect the beanbags. They, for whatever reason, they just really love these Beanie Babies. And they're like, wow, there's so many different kinds. I want to collect all of them.
Yeah.
Collect them. And it'd be the point where, as they're trying to complete their collections, that they'd be racking up these huge phone bills to out-of-state gift shops to ask them about their inventory.
Yep.
And this hype started to build in this little pocket.
I had to travel far and wide to find my lynx, man. I found it eventually in Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah.
My dad drove me all the way up there to get it. And I remember it was at an ice cream shop.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, man, I was so happy when we found that. Yes, the days of the journeying to find the Beanie Babies.
And this little pocket of hype and buzz around these Beanie Babies with these women that picks up, and the word of these small groups of collectors really gets fanned by the flames of early internet.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the internet's such an early concept at this point, but there's like discussion boards and these things start trickling around faster, than the word of mouth through means of, electronic means and the internet. And now we're going to add to the mix. In 1995, Ty announces that some Beanie Babies are going to begin getting retired by the end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
which then creates this artificial scarcity and turns up the heat on collectors trying to make sure that they get certain ones before the end of the year.
Yep.
Before they're gone forever, right? They're in the vaults. You will never see them again. And along with this, Ty had a very specific distribution strategy in which an independent dealer would only receive in one go 36 units of each kind of beanie,
Mm-hmm.
which created a scarcity too. Like you're only going to get 36 Garcia the Bears, that kind of thing.
They were smart how they did this.
Now we're going to add to this cauldron of chaos. Also in 95, a little startup website by the name of eBay gets launched.
There it is.
And there the collectors then began buying and selling beanies on the internet. Some of them for some serious cash. Like, so if any of our fellow Beanie Baby kids out there listening, do you remember Peanut the elephant?
Yes.
The royal blue color elephant. Mm-hmm. It had to be a certain color.
Was it the like baby blue one or no?
Well, the baby blue one was what came out. Now, I think that still has a certain amount of rarity, but it was the royal blue one, which was one of the first ones that came out. And that would go for like $4,000. People would pay that kind of money
to
really? Get it. Yes. Consistently too. Like it would.
I had the baby blue one, not the royal one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it right now. Sorry, carry on.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're good. In fact, for the first 2 years of eBay, Beanie Babies made up between 6 and 10% of its total sales. I saw both numbers, so I'm just like, eh. So, and that's what helped get eBay off the ground, was just how popular the Beanie Babies were on them. Got them going. Right. Collectors created and then sold a pricing guide that speculated at the worth of all these Beanie Babies, all of the different Beanie Babies that were made, speculated at their worth in 2008. Yep. I wonder if anybody else said the year, because that was what it was. It was always like 10 years out. It was like, this has been 2008 when they were going to be sold for thousands and thousands of dollars. Boy. They're going to be so expensive. And that book
were they wrong?
Sold 3 million copies. Yeah. Now people outside this collecting world are going, oh, these like Beanie Baby things, they must be a good investment if they're going to be going for thousands of dollars on the internet. So now let's talk about the crime and all the weird stories that hit the news headlines.
Oh, God.
At the basic level, there's petty crime, right? There's like the small scale thefts, taking them from homes, backpacks, strollers, cars, things like that. Like, man, where the people see them, they're picking up and taking them.
I have no idea that Beanie Babies are like, it's a good thing I hold tight to that, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. We as kids, we just loved them. We just loved to have them and carry them around with us. But there's something like in the adult level, there's something so much more like insidious going on and like weird, insidious. But, it's just like,
taking toys from kids is insidious. You can definitely label it as such. Yeah.
And some people have more complex scams. Like there's a New Hampshire couple who would buy Beanie Babies off of eBay with forged checks, and then would resell them for a lot more money to buy drugs. Some scam artists were the seller themselves, who would either never send out the product, would have like these pictures of these beautiful, hard to find Beanie Babies, and then like actually send them out, never deliver them.
That's terrible.
Or sold knockoffs, which were coming out overseas, and they would just like post them up with like these grainy early internet photos, and then they would look the same online, right? But even more organized and ambitious crime rings got involved. In 1999, a burglar dubbed the Beanie Baby Bandit stole, which makes me think of Home Alone, or the Wet Bandits, bandits. The Beanie Baby Bandits. They stole 200 Beanie Babies from a stationery shop in New York, which was at value is $1,000.
Okay.
Right. I mean, like 200 things at $5 each, $1,000, but you could sell them online for thousands. And so, the actual worth that this person could sell was a lot more than what they were actually having to steal them for in the store. So that made it like a really high theft object, because it's not like stealing diamonds, it was like a thing that they could resell for so much more online. And so there's that. And then in Ohio, there was a van that had like $20,000 worth of inventory in it that was stolen from a toy convention
Oh
outside a toy
no.
convention. There was a story even that was saying like cops were recognizing the value, like that bear is a $400 bear when they see it, like because they're so used to like
Yeah,
seeing what these,
well, especially because
you
when
know.
they make reports, they have to document that down with their value
Mhm.
so that when the insurance claims come through later, I don't know if this happened at this point in time, but now you would insurance claim a valuable item that
Mhm.
would be documented in the police report. So, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it. But something to keep in mind is this is all speculative. Sure, it's worth
Oh,
$3,000
yeah.
if you can get someone to pay for it,
Right.
right?
That's
But this
exactly
is all
right.
like a speculative bubble, right?
Uh-huh.
And so there's and God, there's even like the picture of, it's really famous now. It's the picture of the divorced couple with their giant stack of Beanie Babies, and they're like picking through them. Like, these are my Beanie Babies. These are his Beanie Babies, because they had well, an estimated worth between $2,500 and $5,000. I guess their whole
Oh my
collection was
God, that's
estimated to be that much.
insane.
So, and they weren't dividing up. Yeah, the story. So, like, the story goes, like, they weren't dividing up their. That was the whole point. Like,
Was
with
it
the
in
divorce is
court?
like,
I
we're,
think I'm looking at it. In
yeah, they're on the
1999?
floor. They're crouched on the floor. You'll see them like picking him up, and yeah, there they are. And it was really embarrassing for everyone involved because the couple weren't dividing up their Beanie Babies like they're supposed to. He was supposed to, like, what his were was his, hers were
The
hers, like,
lawyer
just.
has his hand like,
And yeah, because the judge basically was like, right, since you guys can't do this yourselves, I have to sit here, a bailiff has to sit here, your lawyers have to stand here, and we have to watch you go through this. And
wow.
then the couple were like, oh God, this is so embarrassing. Like, and they're like, well, you should have done it. And so they're like, all right, fine. Like, it was just a
Yep.
really cringe thing for everyone involved.
Well,
But anyway,
you should have acted like an adult. So there you go. So
Beanie
if you're going to act
Babies.
like a kid, you're going to get treated like a kid.
Yeah.
You will now do it with supervision.
Yeah. Anyway, they hit their peak. Beanie Babies hit their peak towards the end of the 80s. It's like, or sorry, end of the 90s. So it was like 98, 99 sort of time.
Yeah.
And Ty announces their 1998 retirements. And they're like, okay, which is what they did every year. At the end of 1998, these are the ones that are going to be retired.
Mm-hmm.
And then people, were trying to snatch them up. But a weird thing was that year, they didn't retire them. And so they stayed on the shelves. And it created this moment of like doubt of people being like, oh, well, is this actually a good investment? Are they actually retiring these things? Are they gonna like flood the market again with like the old ones and like try and just create a high, So there's now a question mark above it. Following year, September 1999, Thai Inc. sends out this press release and says, very important notice. On December 31st, 1999, at 11:59 p.m. Central Time, all beanies will be retired, including the above. And everyone was like, wait a second, no more Beanie Babies? Like, oh my gosh. So if the fans were like, no, please don't discontinue them. We love them. And so a few months later, so around the time that they're, quote unquote, retiring all of them,
yeah,
Thai Inc. then's like, oh, no, just kidding. We're going to make a new Beanie Baby line altogether, and we're going to start it off in the new millennium. We'll have a Star Spangled Banner. We're going to call it the Beginning. It's going to be its new name.
Okay.
And so then people were like, again, that question mark gets bigger. We're like, oh, well, try and fabricate like a sense of scarcity with these, or are you trying to rekindle hype around Beanie Babies? Because at this point, the sales weren't starting to wane a little bit.
Yeah.
With that, the bubble, just as quickly as it became exciting and everything for collectors, it burst, and people were left with all this inventory and all these Beanie Babies that they can't sell for anything now. Right. And that's the thing, for those of us who like had them and loved them as a toy, we still have them. But I remember like as a kid, because I was towards the older end, the age I think that they were appropriate for.
Yeah.
I remember thinking I
You
had
would have
one
been
of
in
those
high
like
school
pricing.
by that point. Yeah.
Well, just about. Yeah. 2000 was when I was going into high school.
Yeah.
So like I was older, middle school, like, 7th, 8th grade. That's like not
you don't
cool.
really play with stuff.
I still had them. I wasn't playing with them. Right. But I remember then thinking about them, that with my little pricing book, like, oh, in 2008, like I could resell these and like have money for them. So like,
that's why you got
I
mad
was,
at me.
oh yeah, like if you ripped the tag off, I was pissed because I was like, oh,
Sure,
well,
I
they
ripped the
were,
tag off. I remember being very young, playing with them, and always being like, "Okay, be careful with the tag."
because I would like get mad at you about
Oh,
it.
maybe
Yeah.
that's where that came from.
I think it was the Siamese cat that you ripped the tag off of.
Oh, damn.
I think I remember it being one of my cats or the bear. I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I remember at the time, like as a kid, I'd be like,
It's probably
"No,
over here in this bag because you probably gave them all to me. It's probably sitting over there right now.
yeah, I think I probably just gave you my Beanie Babies. I would think.
You
I mean, I
had the
don't have them
polar
at my
bear. I
house.
can see it, and I know that one was yours because
I
polar
have the
bears.
Diana one in my basement
Oh,
because
do
I
you?
think it got in the Barbie collection.
Oh, nice.
So I have the Diana one like in a box.
Yeah,
I
you
happened
had
to
a
find
lot
it.
of
I was like,
Barbies.
oh,
You had
here.
cool Barbies.
I like my Barbies, yeah. But yeah, so there's the like some weird history behind all these different toys that we know and love from the 20th century. So some of them, you probably remember playing with yourself, and hope it has good memories for you. But I thought when the end of the year, and 2023 with something a little light and nostalgic and chill. There we are.
Incidentally, if anyone wants to buy Beanie Babies, feel free.
We have so many Beanie Babies to go through now.
Yeah, I have to figure out what to do with those.
You'll figure it out.
Hmm.
It's all good. You can always donate them. Go give a child joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out with us for that long. This was about 3 hours of content that I'm going to be working through.
Oh, shit.
It's a long one. Hopefully it keeps you company while you're in your holiday spirit still. But thanks for joining us for it. Ye're going to do this all again in a couple weeks. But in that point, it's going to be 2024. So we'll be joining you for a new year. You'll be joining us for a new year in the smoke circle, doing what we love, talking history, a little bit buzzed while we do it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. We've got some really fun episodes coming up that we've got planned. So it's going to be really great. It's going to get a couple weeks. But in the meantime, folks, get money, get high, give love, and
enjoy the holidays. Take the time to see people you don't always get to see. Appreciate them. Let them know you appreciate them. And set your intentions for the new year.
Right on. Happy New Year, everybody.
Bye.
See you in 2024. Bye-bye.